Okay. Usually what I do every class is review the last day's material, but since this is the add-on for the active record database stuff, a lot of the stuff I would normally review is just going to be review by way of today's demo. So you'll get to see some of that. So just to bring us back to where we were last time, active record is our window into the database. So you have, we're fully on the server side of what we're doing in developing this web app. As part of this, your general software configuration is a server, your actual application, and then a database management system behind all that. So when we use Active Record and what we've been doing with creating databases, migrating databases, we've been using Active Record to perform CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. So today we're going to look at how to get that information out of the database. We saw a little bit last day. We'll do a demo on classes and objects. So this is all part of the broader concept of object-oriented programming. And we'll write at least one instance method. So this is something that we define on an object, and hopefully these terms will become clear as we go through the demonstration. So all sorts of different ways. Remember, active record, that's our window. And every table we create an active record model. So some of the examples we had from last day, when we're thinking about our Instagram account, we have a post. Actually, I should say we have a posts table with the S. We have likes tables, we have user tables, and we have comments tables. Each of those have a corresponding model. And this is an active record object, or it's something that inherits off of the active record base class. So this is a little peek into what we're talking about with object-oriented programming. Probably one of the easiest ways to, well, I guess this is not easy, but a very quick and practical way is just provide that ID. So when you create an object in the table, or you write a record to the database, we're doing the same thing in this case. Every new record in that table, or in every new active record object, is going to have a unique identifier. So we can just use that like we've done here, and you guys are using a very simple SQLite database. Typically starts past counting at 1. We say, find me post number 1, and it dips into the database, brings that information back. Of course, we can't get much more sophisticated. If any of you have had any experience with databases, you'll know that you can select off of certain fields. So suppose you want to find people of a certain age. Everyone 18 years old, you could say pass the age and pass that match criteria. Or everyone greater than 18 years old or younger than 18 years old, whatever it may be. With the example here, we have our user active record model, which is connected to our database. And we say, okay, give me the SQL that's going to say, select from users where email equals email@email.com. It's going to search through the database. It's going to bring all that stuff back. In this case, there should only be one record. Yeah. Find by only returns a single record, usually the first match. There's also other methods that will allow you to bring in all matching records. So the example of where, say, maybe this would be a terrible thing. I can't see any reason why you would do this necessarily. But if you did have a user or two users with the same email, like that's weird, right? Everyone gets an email. We got plenty of emails. How could two people be using the same email? But we could do that. And we'd say, okay, bring us back every record that matches this email. We would be returned an array of matches. In this case, there can only be one user ID. Well, actually, no, that's not true. What we're asking here is we're finding posts because a user creates a post. A post belongs to a user. A user has many posts. What we're asking post is, give me all the records or all the posts that were created by user number 1. There's going to be a whole bunch of them. Naturally, they come back inside of an array. or at least an iterable object. Same kind of situation here with this post.all. It says, give me everything, whatever you got. But it's going to come back in that same structure, right? We're returning multiple matches. This one just says, give me everything. Somehow you've got to take this data, you got to handle this data, you got to be able to iterate over it, just like you have been doing with your posts in your ERBs, where you just look through that entire array and render a new post for each new entry. So this actually was a question last day, and I drew on this very example. The way the question was asked was, how come, I think the model we were using was caches in my salvage app. How come we have this big C caches here and we use little c cache over here? The big C is the class. This is an abstraction. It's non-concrete. Here's a schematic blueprint of a house. Many houses can be created from this schematic. Each one of those actual physical structures is the object. So class versus object. Class, conceptual, non-concrete. Object, physical, the actual house at the address on the street, so to speak. So to create an object, here we are creating an object, but first we create a class. And we just use this simple Ruby syntax to say, look, here's our class. And always we use a capital letter. I think that's actually a rule in Ruby. I might be wrong about that, but I think Ruby requires that a class has a capital letter. Every time we want to create a new house, we call this new method. So this, looks very much the same as what you were doing with creating new posts. You say post.new, you assign all these values. In effect, you're basically doing the exact same thing. That is an instance. That's an object from your post class. The exact same thing happening here. So here, active record object. Why not? You could create a house model to match some table in the database. You might store, street address, quadrant of the city, country, all that kind of stuff. The nice thing, and really arguably the most powerful thing about object-oriented programming, is being able to inherit and reuse code, right? So this class here, this house class, is inheriting off of a more primitive class. Still very sophisticated. I don't mean primitive, in any sort of diminutive sense. It's just that it's higher above. It's an ancestor. So when we use this notation, we say, give the house class that we are creating, give it all the capabilities of this parent class, this ancestor class. You can inherit all the way back as far as you want, as many layers deep as you want to go. And every single time you create a new layer or a new class, it inherits all the properties of its parent. So, sad thing about this is this becomes more important the further we go. But right now, I've been expressing these models using a very specific language. I said a post has one user or belongs to a user. User has many posts. The example we're using here, so if you're picturing a library, you might think of a very simple way to database their books. We have a library table, which has many books, and we have a book table, and each record in this table belongs to a particular library. It's not, if it doesn't have that, then it's out on the street somewhere, right? So to establish these relationships, we have to do a couple of things. We saw this, and we're going to see this today. We have to build a relationship inside of these primitive tables within the database. This is even before ActiveRecord enters the picture. If I want to say a book belongs to a library, then I have to physically change my table in the database to reflect this. And when we're talking in the Ruby world, we would say we'd create a library ID column. And that ID inside of that column would match with whatever library this book belongs to. But we also say a library has many books. It's only the relationship in the book table that establishes this. This is a little bit of software magic provided by ActiveRecord. And we can use this library to easily retrieve the books to which belong to it from the database. So this is stuff I can sit here and I can describe it to you. This is definitely stuff that is better demonstrated, but this is the correct notation. And these, as written, are fully functional ActiveRecord objects. And this is how we establish that relationship in ActiveRecord. So before we were describing the changes we needed to make to the table. Now we're describing the changes that we need to make into this window, this representation of the table. So if I want to say, and it's very simple, very plain language, my book belongs to a library. And you make that connection using a symbol. Colons mean symbols. On the flip side, library has many books. So it's these two method calls that really you might not fully appreciate. But this is doing a lot of work for you. It makes life a lot easier. And the only real reason you would know that this is so wonderful is if you live without it. So this is, one of these things. You're just going to kind of see it as I go along. So, top example here. We're just retrieving some data from the database. So using our library example, we just say, give us the library with ID 1. And okay, so I guess it's in Toronto. I want to get all the books in the Toronto library. I can call the books method. It's because we did this, we said a library has many books, that we can do this. Right? Yeah. It's one of those things, you just kind of have to see it. And it's too bad you can't live life without it. Then you'd really, really understand why this is so great. But we have a few things broken down here. Here's an instance of the library class, or what we call an object. Object and instance are interchangeable. We have all the books established by this has many relationship. So when we make this call and we make that all call on top of it, it says, give me every single book that has library ID equal to whatever the t.library ID is equal to. Give me everything that matches. And then finally I guess that's really give me the everything that matches. Okay, so the reverse is also true. Find a book. Say, okay, well, because this book belongs to a library, I can find out whatever information is contained in that library record. Flip side, there you go. Two-way linkage. Okay, instance methods. Yeah, mostly the slides are really to keep me accountable. So if you're watching what's happening here and you're seeing it, really, if you're going to pick anything up here, it's going to be in the demo. So if you see something I didn't cover in the demo, then you know something's up. So here I am just giving you the content. This is like one giant, introductory slide here, and then you're going to see the real stuff in just a second here. So you'll notice right away, if we take this stuff out here, you have this ActiveRecord based class. Nothing like we haven't seen before. You've seen this with a cache class, or with your posts, likes, users, all that kind of stuff, all those classes. We can define new methods to act upon a certain object. So in this case, we have, this library, this book relationship. Naturally, books have authors. So here's that third table in our wider database schema. And we just want to have a really short way to look at that author's first name and look at that author's last name and just take the first characters off of each, right? So it returns the initials, the author's initials. This self, this is where it kind of gets a little bit wonky, and this is not something you're going to, some people it does, not everybody, including myself. It took me a long time to figure this stuff out, but this is introspective. So if someone makes an object of an author or an author instance, that instance is going to be able to look at itself and say, give me my first name, give me my last name, and in this case, return, I don't know, maybe it's Stephen King, return SK to the user, the calling context. So here's our initials. created a new author, first name Dan, last name Robson. Robson, here's that initials method defined in the previous slide. Does exactly what I described. Takes that first name, right, assigned here. Takes that last name, assigned here. See the index 0, that's on a string. Give me the very first character. Every letter in the string has an index. So give me 0 count, the one at the very beginning. Do the same for the last name. Interpolate them in these double quotations and return me DR. So that's how we define instance methods. There's also class methods, but we don't even touch on that. Okay. So hopefully some of you taking notes, studious detail about what we're covering today. Hold me accountable. And if you have any questions that these slides raised, well, I hope my demo raises some questions as well. Okay, so first thing, let's do an introduction to object-oriented programming. So this is just a little bit of hands-on stuff. I hope to actually go through this pretty quick. This is mostly just to show you what is happening with this active record stuff, right? This idea of inheritance. So you're seeing all the results of inheritance. We're just trying to show you a little bit about why it works this way, or how we define it to work this way. So the example I always turn to is animals. So I'm going to call a new animals program, open it up, and the first thing I'm going to do is define an animal class. We almost never have occasion to use plurals, so just something to be aware of if you're going to define your own classes. Def animal, or sorry, not def. What am I doing? Right off to a bad start here. Class animal. So I have something. And everything in Ruby is an object is a class inheriting from some other class. In fact, there is the ultimate base class, right? Eventually, all these things boil down to one basic class. So when I do this, class inherits that base class. Maybe not directly, though. I'm not 100% sure on that, actually. But let's just try something else. So here I've got this class, and I'm going to create a new animal. And I say animal dot new. So it's really not doing anything much apart from, just a standard Ruby object. Let's see what it looks like, though, when I execute this program. There it is. Not much to look at, right? It tells me what it is. So this is the string representation. And it gives me this super long memory address that looks like a 64-bit machine, 4, 8, 12, 24, 48. That's weird. Okay, anyway, I'll dwell on that later. A memory address. This thing exists somewhere in memory. That's all it's doing. Now, I like to use the animal class because, we have, or at least, I never took high school biology, never took any biology in university, but you have this idea of a taxonomy, right? We get these Latin names. There's genuses and species and all this kind of stuff. Sorry, I'm not a biologist, but you start kind of at the top in these trees, or these nodes, and you trickle out. Say you're like looking at species of dogs. So you can see these how different species are interrelated, which ones are common, which ones can reproduce with each other, and all this kind of stuff. So let's do a couple things here. We're going to keep it very simple. But every time you call new, so we're just adding a little bit of functionality. Every time you call the new method, like I did below, it in turn calls an initialize method. I'm just going to show you really quickly just to prove it. Initialize new animal, like that. So I'm not actually saying dot initialize anywhere. That's all happening with this dot new. Here we go. Initialize new animal. See? Proof that it did, in fact, get called. So very special method. It's the first one that gets called when you instantiate a new object. I'm going to give it a little bit more purpose. Let's say I'm like a vet or something. I'm just making up a a database as I go along. I can assign instance variables, values that I pass through this call to new. So I'm just really just going to do one thing. I'm going to measure this animal, measure its weight. If I do this, of course, I have to actually provide it a value. Let's say it's, I don't know, large dog. This is a really big dog. This dog's like 200 pounds. All right. Let's see what happens now. We're going to execute. Yeah, still same thing, still working. Somehow I want to be able to get this value out, though. I'm going to define an instance method. So upon every instance of this class, I can call this method weigh, which says, it just outputs something to the screen. I weigh this many pounds. Weight, whatever's stored in that instance variable, pounds, just like that. Okay, so down here, here's my animal. I'm going to weigh my animal. Call the method, I weigh 200 pounds. There you go. So that's an instance method. That directly coincides to or corresponds to this kind of concept here. This initials method. We're doing the same thing. We define a method that you can call on any instance.
Why did you not need self?
Self is, that's a really good question. Self is, well, let me show you what self is. Whoops. I'm just going to put self, inspect, just like this. So same thing, I just commented out that, that weight. Here's what self is. It's just that animal. And it shows me this value. So I don't have to use self in this case because I have this instance variable. This is the exact same kind of instance variable that makes it so that you can set something in actions.rb and bring it back through your ERB file. That's what that's doing there. Any further instance methods that I define on this class, I can access that weight. So I could probably do this though. Let's just try it just for kicks. I can never remember. Sometimes I use so many languages I can't keep them straight. This might work though. Self.weight. Let's see. No, I don't think that's gonna work, but let's see. Yeah, no. So self in this case, that should work, shouldn't it? Huh. No, that doesn't work. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. I'm like going back in one way and the other way, and it's like, no, this isn't a Ruby thing. The other reason why self isn't used here, and that it is used in ActiveRecord, though, is that self is actually calling methods. Well, kind of. These are not instance variables. These are accessors in the wider class. So different story, but a really good question. I feel like I'm letting you down in that answer there. All right. Okay, so coming back to here, let's expand this a little bit. So we got, let's try, let's make a class of animals. I like dogs. I don't own a dog. But this dog is going to inherit from animal. So now when I create a new dog, I'll leave this here for reference. Whoops, what happened? Oh, there we go. I'll leave this up for reference, but I'm going to comment it out for now. And I'll say, here's my dog. New. And we'll make it a smaller dog. This dog only weighs 30 pounds. I'm not sure why I gave you those. There we go. Let's try this. Let's say puts. Oh, I don't need to do that. I can just say dog.weigh. Just like that. So didn't actually give it an instance variable here. But since it is inheriting from here, I fear it's not going to work though. Any guesses as to why? Let's try it. Let's see if it works. Oh, it did work. Wonderful. They're me getting confused. I work all day in JavaScript. Not that that's any excuse for this, but yeah, it works. Okay. So inherited this ability to initialize with the weight, and inherited this ability to weigh this animal and to get some sensible feedback. Okay, so let's do another one. Let's say cat. We'll basically just copy and paste. And we'll see. Cat. We'll make this a big cat too. I don't know, what's a big size for a cat? I saw a Maine Coon one time. That was one of the biggest cats I'd ever seen. Anyone know what that is? It's a big cat. Okay, so I got my cat. I got my dog. This cat weighs 20 pounds. This dog weighs 30 pounds. I weigh 30 pounds. I weigh 20 pounds. Two common things. The thing is about these guys. Now, let's just use this as kind of a weird example. Let's say I want to teach my dog some trick. I say, define, do trick. And I don't know, maybe this dog just speaks. He says, woof, like that. Well, that might work. Yeah, okay. That's fine. No, let's make a generic one. Let's say, well, a more specific one. Let's say, whoops, animal, speak. So I definitely want this dog to speak. And I also want this cat to do the same thing. Except this one's going to say, meow. Actually, would a cat really do that? I don't know. I don't really know a lot about cats. They'd probably just look at you. So I'm going to say question mark, like that. This cat doesn't have time for your nonsense. All right. So try this. Come down to here. So now we can call this speak. Dog speak. Cat speak. I weigh 30 pounds. Woof. I weigh 20 pounds. Question mark. This is the kind of thing right here when you start seeing this kind of code duplicated, right? So like, cats and dogs, maybe this is kind of a silly example because who's going to teach their cat to speak? Has anyone done that? Like, unless you're a movie trainer, who's going to try to do that? Cats and dogs are a special class of animal. So we don't just jump right from the animal base class right up to dogs. We can put some intermediary stuff in there. And we can dry out our code in the process. So we're going to make a special class of animal called pet. And that'll inherit from animal. And this dog inherits from pet. And, pets are kind of unique in that we give them names, right? We don't do that necessarily for every animal. So let's say definitionalize. Name. So it's going to inherit everything, but this is where things kind of get tricky. We can, I started out with the intention of generifying that speak method, but I think this might be a better example. I say def name, just like that. Puts my name is, there's that instance variable, just like that. This might actually be a good place to try that self out. I'm curious if that's going to work. Right, so that should call the above. It'll call another method inside that class, right? Maybe that clarifies things a little bit more. Okay, let's try that out though. So I got to make a couple updates here. So I got my dog inheriting from pet. I got my cat inheriting from pet. I still need a couple of things here though. Somehow I got to initialize this name and the weight, right? Because we start off with weight, so somehow I got to pass this off. And I had a dog when I was younger. Her name was Candy. And that crazy giant cat I saw, his name was Bob. Just like that. So we say speak, dog weigh. Let's just comment these out. We're going to do kind of two things at once. Say dog name. And we'll say cat. Whoops. Cat name. So we should see like kind of the same stuff we saw before. A little bit. So my name is Candy. I weigh blank pounds. My name is Bob. I weigh blank pounds. We have a problem here because we have this intermediary pet class, which sort of stands between pets and ordinary animals you might see at the zoo or at, on the farm or whatever. We got this special animal we call our friend. I have to somehow initialize this weight. And now here's the neat thing about Ruby. Well, actually all object-oriented programming. You can call methods on the parent class above you. When you're talking about, well, in the terms of with initialize, this comes in handy just by passing variables up to the parent. So I initialized with this weight down here. Candy weighs 30, should actually probably weigh closer to 70. It gets passed to dog, which then gets passed to animal, which actually takes these values. The super calls this animal initialize right up here. And you don't have to just use this in initialize. You can use this in any sort of class that you want. And I might be able to cook up a good example of that. So I pass weight. That should fix the problem. My name is Candy. I weigh 70 pounds. My name is Bob. I weigh 20 pounds. Okay, now is that worth pursuing? You know what? No, I don't think so. Any more object-oriented details? So this is just kind of, as I said, this is like more general interest stuff. And it's just kind of showing you that, all this stuff with ActiveRecord, this isn't magic. This is a very common principle across, well, every object-oriented programming language. So that should explain, or at least in part give you an idea as to why this works, where I can just inherit off that ActiveRecord base class. We got a whole bunch of methods, a whole bunch of different properties that all of a sudden cache now can take advantage of. So with that, let's move on a little bit forward here. We'll get rid of this. Actually, we'll leave that up for now. So I spent this morning kind of making a couple of enhancements. So this is what things currently look like, where we left off last day. Same old, nothing much new, except all these results are now coming from the database. Now in this app, which I actually do plan on using, at least on a small scale with me and some of my friends, what we need to be able to do is be able to associate individual posts or in these finds, these goodies that we find. Each user should have any number of caches, as I've described them here. So this is very similar to the posts. Now, this is going to reveal a little bit, or should shed a little bit of mystery on these migrations. So the nice thing about migrations, so this is my very first table that I created. I created caches. Now it's time to create a users table, right? I don't have to start from scratch though. And oftentimes when you're using migrations, you don't want to do that. So I can just add things and change things incrementally. So just so I'm not working blind, first thing I want to do is create a user table. So I'm going to create a brand new file. And if you remember from last day, what keeps this stuff in order is just alphabetical. At this point, we've created the base table. Everything's working. Next time I run migrations, it's going to skip that one over. So I say create user table.rb. So it's going to be very much the same. So I'm going to copy and paste some of this stuff just because it's good to be lazy. And I want to say create user table, just something descriptive. These naming conventions do matter. If you run into it, let me know. I will help you through it. Just going to take a couple things. We don't need this anymore. What do we want? We want an email. Well, we say a name, an email, and a password. So very, very basic user model. We're not going to encrypt the password today. That'll come in a future class. So we're just going to keep it as a string, ordinary string. So I've done this. I've got, this is what my database currently looks like in the schema. Just one thing, this schema, by the way, you don't touch this one. You let the migrations and let that active record database relationship establish this for you. This is not to be edited by humans. But what it has done is it created this caches table with all these different fields. Now this is going to change when I run bundle exec rake db migrate. I hit enter. It's going to skip over this one because it knows it already did it. It's going to jump straight to that one and execute. If we're lucky, maybe we'll get to see it. Yep, there it appeared right before our eyes, just like that. So I was looking at this. This is pretty good. But I thought as part of a demo, and just probably because it's good practice, I want to make a few changes to this model. Now, I don't think I need that days ago. I can perform that operation in software. So I want to remove this one. I want to remove that column, and I want to add a reference to the owner user, because some actual person created this cache and posted it to the site. So I need way to establish that relationship, right? I get to say a user has many caches, or a cache belongs to a user. So to do that, I need to add another column here. So create another migration. New file, say this is going to, I'm just using the numbers 1, 2, and 3, 0, 1, and 2, because it's easy to keep straight. I'm going to say change caches table like this. It's just an ordinary Ruby file, so .rb. And I'm going to do a quick copy and paste just to save a little bit of time. So a little bit different, not too much different. Here's our current, this was the last migration. We made a change, we defined this method. It called these create tables. So now in this one, I'm just changing an existing table. I don't need to create a new table, but I have to use special methods to accomplish certain tasks. So in this case, I said, I want to remove the days ago column. I've got a much better way to determine how many days ago this post was created. And I also want to add a reference to user in the cache. So really it's just the table name you want to perform the operation on, and the column name in this case. So let's see how this actually changes it. We'll keep an eye on our schema. So this is the authoritative definition of our database. I'll run the next migration. And there it went. Okay, so no new tables, but that cache disappeared. And I now have this user ID column. So one at a time, right? And you can see hopefully how this will be useful, especially if you have a database you're not sure about. Right? You don't have to figure this all out necessarily. The more you can figure out, the better, but you're going to want to make changes eventually. Migrations allow you to do that. So looking good, but I don't have any information for my user. So I'm just going to cook up well, at least one. Hang on. In my seeds directory. So I'm going to create a new user up here because that's my new table. Oh, I'm skipping a step. Anyone know what I'm skipping as I type it in? Skipping that step. So my name is Danny. That's what my parents used to call me. Here's my email, danny@capitolhill.ca. And my password is secret. Usually I don't go by Danny, but I needed an alter ego and I always thought it'd be funny to have an enemy named Lanny. So if I was like some sort of comic book guy or something, I'd say, okay, this guy is my arch nemesis. His name is Lanny. Or maybe Manny, I suppose, would have worked as well. All right, Lanny and Danny. His password is also secret. So I kind of skipped over the this is just ordinary Ruby code, by the way. The way I did this before is I had my caches and I put them all in an array. And then I looped over top of this array and I created each individual item one at a time. The reason why I left Lanny and Danny apart like this was because I need to get their IDs. Because remember, a cache belongs to a user. And a user has many caches. So to make this happen, I have to update my seed data to reflect these changes. No longer does it have days ago, but it does have this user ID column. So let's grab that. Here's my user ID. Ruby's really smart that way. You don't even need to reference the ID. So Danny's going to have 2 posts. And Lanny's going to have this one. I got to take out these days ago as well. Days ago. And this one's going to belong to Lanny. So we're going to get more posts in the future when you can actually start uploading this stuff. But our 3 posts now. Here's my arch enemy Lanny, scooping up all the good stuff. All right. Grab this, change it over. Okay. This isn't going to work though. What did I miss? I skipped a step. What does every table in your database need to talk through ActiveRecord? A model. So I'm going to create a user model. It's going to be very similar to my cache RB model. Let's see. Let's just to show you. Let's close some of this stuff down. We don't need our schema. We don't need these migrations anymore. Here's user RB. Here's cache RB. And just because I like to copy and paste, and Vim makes it really easy to write over stuff, I like to copy and paste that and say user, like this. Still not going to work. We have no current way to leverage this has many caches relationship. We have no way to measure or to build this cache has a user relationship. To do that, we do that right here. Has many caches. This plural is going to cause some problems. This is a weird one. So this is like the worst one I could have picked, but we'll go with it for now. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The cache belongs to a user, and I use that symbol. Sinatra's just smart enough to know, look wherever these defaults are configured, and find the file that matches this symbol. You don't even need to put in the RB. It's just looking in that directory by default. So at this point, I've got my model set up, filled in that step that I skipped. I went straight to the seed data without actually building the user model. I should be able to migrate. Let's see if it works. Or sorry, not migrate, but seed. So bundle exec rake db seed. Now, if I did everything right, it's going to add those 2 new users, and it's actually going to add some superfluous data as well. Oh, that's not going to work because I already got old databases in there. Let's see what happens. Yeah, sure. Okay, that was totally expected, admittedly at the last minute. It's not going to work because we don't have this table. This is kind of weird, right? Let's say, wait, what happened there? Let's take a closer look at that. Could not find table users. That's not the error I was expecting. Did I? Good eyes if you're right. No. That's a little weird. I did migrate though, didn't I? Yeah, because we saw it change. So migration should be done. Oh, you know what? I think it is. I think it's because we got old data. That might be the problem. Let's try some. Here's a shortcut, rakedb reset. So that's going to say, okay, well, you still have this database, but now you don't have any of this stuff. These migrations have not been executed. Let's say rakedb migrate, like that. It's going to create all those tables, make all those changes, get us back to the same place. Now, fingers crossed, same problem. Could not find table users. Let's take a look at our schema. Oh, I messed up on this guy. Oh, that's why. Very picky about pluralization. So I got to do all that over again, but this is the problem. So this was my migration. That's no good. When you're creating the database, plural. When you're doing the active record stuff, unless you're, establishing these relationships, has many caches, and this one is going to cause a problem. Just watch. Okay, let's fix this for now. Did I save it? I think so. Yeah, there we go. So let's reset. Everything's back. Migrate. Seed. Just like that. All right, worked. Wonderful. So if I refresh, I should be able to see the exact same thing I've been so bored of looking at lately. This will change, but it's all there. It's in my database. And no matter how I change the interface, the database is, it's going to persist. It's just going to use that same data over and over again.
Can you explain why in your third migration, why can't you just edit the first user?
In the first migration one?
Yeah, so your number 2
Mm-hmm.
deleted a column and then changed it. Why can't you just make those edits?
Oh, you can. Absolutely. And that would be the simpler way. I mostly just wanted to demonstrate migrations. Now, if you're looking at like a huge project, that's easier said than done. We're looking at a little, salvage project. Yeah, very simple. But I just wanted to show you that, this migrations will, you can just keep adding and adding and adding, and there will be no detriment. All right. Good question, though. Thank you. Okay. So we got our data, we got our updated models, we got our relationships. Let's address that problem I was talking about with the days ago. This is kind of a goofy thing. Before we were saying, okay, well, this was posted 9 days ago. We're kind of doubling up on our data. We don't really need to do that. That's poor database design. So let's take this out, just making myself some room. Wait, I wanted that guy. No, cache. The reason I say that, though, is because if I look at, my schema here, what's a good way to find how many days ago it was? We already have these timestamps. So rather than physically recording, adding redundant data, why don't I just say, okay, look at created at, look at today, and say, well, that's how many days ago. So this is where our opportunity, remember, keep me accountable. We're talking about instance methods now. We're going to create an instance method that's going to determine how many days ago this was posted using the data I just described. So let's look in our cache. We'll say def days ago, just like that. And I want to make sure I'm not going too far afield here. Just give me a second. There we go. This is actually tricky. I'm always having trouble working with timestamps and all that kind of stuff. Not sure why. But I can say, find me now. Give me it, return it as a date. This now, this is actually kind of interesting. Maybe I should show you this. If I run tux, I just want to show you this time class. That's what I'm using there. There's no time. T-I, and there we go. Time class. And I can say time now. That's the date as it's formatted. That's the string representation of, I believe that's that might be Greenwich Mean Time. I say that just because this plus 000. I can get this date. This gives me a different thing. Oh, here's the date. The neat thing about these time objects is that you can kind of treat them like mathematical operators. So if I say time.now to date minus time.now, no, let's say yesterday. Let's see if this works. This probably will work. That's the surprising thing about it. That's why I love Ruby. To date. No yesterday. -1. So is that yesterday? -2? No. That's just taking off seconds. Which one? Date.today. Can you do that? Those are different objects, though. Anyway.
Start with
date.now. Today. But we're trying to like find out how many days. Okay, here, let's just skip to the cut to the chase here. This is silly. All right, so we got time now to date. All I'm trying to do is I'm taking the time right now. And I'm going to use the created at. We'll say self.created at. So this is when I use that timestamp thing. This is how you get the number of days. The reason I know that is because I had to search Google. Right, so this is why I'm sort of glossing over the details here. It converts it into these dates, and you can subtract them, and you can convert this all into an integer. So that's what's going to take it. That's what's going to provide those number of days. So let's change our views. Here's our view. Let's use index. And for each one of these guys, we'll put this up in the header. We'll say, posted using our alligator tags, cache days ago. Let's see if it works. My abandoned press board posted 0 days ago because we created this project, so that's kind of a letdown. These were actually posted how many days ago? But we keep recreating the database. Now it's like 0 days. Okay, so let's going forward with that. Let's create another instance method. Coming back to our our cache. Let's say def get freshness. I think this is a little bit nicer way to describe it, right? So you don't have to like do the arithmetic in your head when you're scrolling past all these pictures of junk. We can say days equals self.days ago. Like, why not? This is another application of that self. It's going to do that introspective thing. It's going to discover that, yes, I do have a method called days ago, and it's going to jump right up to here. So just a nice way to recycle some code. If days is less than 3, we'll say that this is a fresh find. Else if days is greater than or equal to 3, but it is also just a little less than a week, we'll say that this is getting stale. And then finally, if it's anything older than that, probably long gone. I'm mostly just doing this because it's a little bit nicer to look at than posted 0 days ago, and maybe a little bit more dramatic. So let's take that. Let's come back to our index. We'll recycle this a little bit. We'll say cache freshness. That looks pretty good. Let's see what it actually looks like. Did I mess something up? Oh, I didn't save. Hang on. I can tell I didn't save because that little thing is a circle. There we go. Let's try that again. Oh, what did I do? Let's get freshness. I called freshness. I want to change that around. Let's take that. Get freshness. There we go. Let's try it again. Did I not save again? Look at that. There we go. Try that again. Okay. Fresh find. Posted 0 days ago. We can leave those there. Let's style it a little bit. Let's make it a lot. Styles are so very important to user experience and the success of your website. So spend lots of time doing that. Always very envious of people who can do this well. Now I'm just trying to find the styles that I created. Here it is. So all my styles, of course, right where I left them under public in my app.css. Now I think I might have applied to, nope, didn't. So this is what I decided. So I've got a cache. Every new file here takes on that class cache, right? So that's what that's looking at in my app.css. So anything nested inside of here, at least in this case, the H2, that header, I'm going to take that head space. I'm just going to color it green for now. We could probably color it, depending on the level of freshness. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Perhaps for another day. Reduce the size and make it a sans serif font because it's I find it easier to read. So let's see what changes. This should all just kind of get boosted up and maybe shrunk down a little bit. The font is going to change as well. Or not. Did I not save it again? No, that's saved. What happened? Cache image, cache H1. Huh. So doing a little bit of debugging, trying to figure out why this isn't green, first of all. There's cache. Cache H2. Did I mess something up here? Cache H2. It's trying to tell me something. What is that? Should not be qualified. It's trying to tell me something. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but let's try that. Make that thing go away. Oh, there it is. Not sure what was happening there. Let's see if I change it back, if it'll break again. Well, now it likes it. So, okay. So just a few minor changes, right? I think I actually changed the bottom one just so we can tighten this up a little bit here as well. It's a good thing just to, I personally tend to neglect this stuff, so I'm trying to demonstrate good habits. And I will say, let's say margin bottom, 0. So really I'm just squishing this up a little bit. Watch what happens. There it goes. Okay, so not bad. There's probably lots of room for improvement there, but we'll leave it at that. And the one thing I very much want to show you, and we're doing surprisingly good for time considering I'm consistently over, we usually save one critical step for the last day. And I know someone asked me a couple days ago about deployment in Heroku. So I'm going to go through this. The real shame of leaving this till the last day is that it's actually pretty tricky. Like, this DevOps stuff always brings up things that you hadn't anticipated. And that may happen as you're watching me do this. So first thing I'm going to do is introduce you to Heroku. I invite you to actually sign up for this account if you haven't already. Get a little bit of a head start on this, just because it's easy to neglect it, and then it's going to be 3 weeks from now, and you're not going to be able to whip it out on your phone and show people what you did. So I'm showing you how to do that today. Heroku is infrastructure. We push our software to Heroku. It's smart. It knows what Sinatra does. It takes common configurations, deploys it to the internet. And if you're really proud of what you do here, you can also have your own domain name, register at GoDaddy, point it at Heroku, and show people what you've done. So sign up. First thing, what you need to do is install the Heroku tool belt. Now I'm going to put this inside of the lecture summary, so you'll have that reference. You don't need to pay too close attention. What this is doing, when you see it there, big, long, complicated thing. You see this wget, you see a URL, and this is a shell script. This is kind of a sketchy thing to do, actually, but we trust Heroku. It's going to download a piece of software and set itself up so that we can interact with the service through the command line. So, installing all that required software. And it would be a good idea, just to try this out, because I guarantee there's going to be kinks. This kind of stuff always invites problems. And I'm already remembering the problem I had with that caches. See, it worked nicely in Cloud 9. Might not work so nicely on Heroku. These are the things that happen. First thing you do, though, you log in. Since I've installed that software now, I can use this Heroku command and say log in. Okay, logged in. Now I'm talking to the server. Except instead of talking through this web interface, I'm talking from the command line in Cloud 9. Next thing I want to do, Heroku create. Just like that. This is just allocating resources. See, it assigns you a random web address. You can set that yourself if the name's available, or as I said, you can register on GoDaddy and probably set it up. I've never done it because I think Heroku is a little bit expensive. This stuff is free though. So for what you guys are doing, this is hobbyist stuff. It's perfect. So what I just did there, you saw I had one virtual machine server, the whole bit. Now I've got the second one. This is Mighty Dawn. And it provided me this URL here if I want to go and visit my website. So if I go and visit it now, there's nothing there, but the stuff has been allocated. Welcome to your new app, right? This obviously isn't my new app. Okay, so you guys, when you're working in local development, are using SQLite. Heroku, for Heroku, this is not an option. You're going to use something called Postgres or PostgreSQL. To do that, you need to install a few production dependencies. all of your third-party dependencies, and we're just revisiting, this should be review, are stored in your gem file. This is all the software in addition to what you need to develop, or in addition to what you see here that other people have provided. So you see ActiveRecord is the one we've been talking about for the last 2 days. So down here, I'm going to add a couple of more dependencies, and they are just for Heroku. So you see these groups down here. We got special software for development and testing. Now we've got production. So this is the real public-facing server that people are going to visit when they come and see your application. We need 2, and these are provided by Heroku. Rails 12 factor, have no idea what that actually does. That is required by Heroku. And then PG. So I think I put a PQ there when I meant PG for Postgres. This is your database adapter. ActiveRecord doesn't matter what adapter. If there an adapter exists for it, it's either going to talk to SQLite or it's going to talk to Postgres. That's kind of another nice thing about ActiveRecord. So I've added these dependencies. Doesn't matter that this is only for production. I still need to install. I say bundle, install. That's going to read through my gem file. That's going to install these 2 things that I haven't seen before. So here's PG getting installed. It's a pretty big package, so it might take a couple seconds. And then Rails 12 factor and some other dependencies that Rails 12 factor has. Okay, so set up there. This is one of those trip me ups. Config. You never know unless you were me and you were working through this morning. This thing is a real pain in the butt to Heroku. If you leave this line in here, it's not to say yours has it. It might, but this is going to cause it to crash. So I take that out right away. Next thing I got to do is set up my database. This is all copy and paste stuff, so you're going to see this in the course or the lecture summary. And I'm going to do exactly what I said, copy and paste. Got to set up my database configuration to talk to the new production level database. There's a couple things here that are going to be duplicate. This is the old stuff. Here I am in development. Connect me to SQLite. The new stuff I've added, right up here, if I'm in development, still do SQLite, but if I'm out there somewhere in the world in a production environment, set me up with Postgres. That's what I've added there. This may be part of your new skeleton. If not, as I said, this will all be part of my lecture notes. And I think you should try to do this, especially if you want to show off. So we've got that. That's all set up. Pretty mundane stuff. Here's also why I've been showing you about GitHub. And I got a really early start on that. I think we're almost ready to go. I think. But I've got to commit this. So let's say git remote -v. Here's my Heroku. Here's my origin. I don't need origin. Actually, yes, I do. Let's leave that there for now. Let's say git commit -am demo active record relationships and set up for Heroku. Should be descriptive. Git status. Oh, still got a few I'm not tracking. Git add everything. Actually, we don't want that DB SQLite. We'll say git add app DB migrate for Heroku. Add. There we go. Status. We don't need that. Oh, git add app. Okay. Git commit -m get user model. That's what we just added right there. And migrations. Okay. Don't need to worry about this SQLite database, but notice this again. Git remote -v. When I ran all that Heroku stuff, it created a couple of repositories. So this stuff should be familiar. This is what you would normally see when you're pushing to GitHub, Heroku added this new thing. This is why it's important to get this thing under version control, because services like Heroku especially depend on this to deploy your application. I'm going to push to Heroku, and it's going to do all the same stuff you do when you set up your Cloud9 workspace. So I say git push Heroku. Keep my fingers crossed. I'm pretty sure this is going to break. Let's just try it out though. I think the real test is going to be when we try to set up the database. And I'm anticipating a problem. In fact, I'm going to get ready to address that problem. It's going to be a weird one, I promise, if we see it. So doing your bundle install, all of this happening on the remote Heroku server. Just like what you did when you set up your environment for the first time. And it looks like it's good. Okay, so we're still going to have a couple things missing. But here's my application at MightyDawn36084 HerokuApp.com. Oh no, what happened? Problem, we don't have a database yet. We never actually migrated or seeded it. This is how you do it. So Heroku. Come back. Heroku bundle exec rake db create. Actually, I don't think we need that one. Let's do migrate. So exactly the same way as you did before. Oh, my mistake. Exactly the same way, except I prefixed it with Heroku run. This is saying, okay, we've got this command line interface. We got these resources allocated. I want you to run bundle exec on the server I'm going to use to serve up my application. There it goes. I think this is going to fail. No. So far, so good. Okay, so all my changes. Okay, there's Recycle Freedom. There's my raccoon. Still don't have any posts. I don't have any data in my database. So the exact same thing again. This is why it's good to know your tools and your environment. I'm just going to run the exact same thing, except with Heroku run, seed the database, like that. Now this has got to be where it's going to blow up. Come on. Look at that. Not a problem. There we are. Okay. That's almost a little bit disappointing. You know why? Because I want to show you. We have in, all this stuff that pluralizes here, like belongs to user versus my user model, which belongs to caches. This caused a problem earlier because this is irregular in the mind of ActiveRecord. So you want to make these conversions. I don't know, what do you call it in French? Is this conjugation? I'm not even really sure. But you want to pluralize these things. Not everyone's been anticipated by ActiveRecord. So that's the problem I want to solve. It's a moot point. It's already there. So I pushed it to Heroku. I'm going to push it now to GitHub. And all is well. I've got my Cloud9. Everything's been committed. GitHub reflects this. And now, even if I turn off Cloud9, over here at Mighty Dawn, this is going to be running, and you can put a little link on your cell phone and you can show people, right? So it's going to continue running even though you shut down Cloud9. That's deployment. So we're going to probably revisit this every day as we do more demos. This is normally saved for the very last day, and just as a result, not everybody gets to get their stuff up online. So, okay, yeah, questions. Just crazy, right? Is this overwhelming? Yeah, it's nuts. I know. So how do you teach this in like 1 hour a night? And I'm 1 hour and like 20 minutes going over time here. Well, we're here for you. We'll get you through it. And yeah, I'll send out all these notes. And hopefully some of you today will have your stuff online.